Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Starlight Book Club. My name is Autumn Lee, and this is Kelly Liu. And today we're going to be talking about the Joy Luck Club. Say hi, Kelly.
Hey everyone!
Hello,
If
Kelly.
you
Oh,
didn't notice, I also have a new mic now, so
yes, she sounds
if you notice a
amazing.
change.
Yeah, so today we're reading The Joy Luck Club. If you haven't read it, it's basically a book about generational trauma for Chinese immigrant families. It was extremely popular, I guess, in like the 80s and 90s, but also kind of divisive, going by a couple of Reddit threads that I looked at. Apparently, the impression that people have is that it is um, kind of a how do I say this? It depicts an era of Chinese culture and society that isn't really that common anymore, and that honestly, a lot of Asian American people feel uncomfortable being associated with, meaning a culture that's very patriarchal, very traditional. Like most of the mothers in this book have gone through like arranged marriages or things like that.
Mhm.
And for these
Former
reasons,
concubines.
former concubines, exactly. And for these reasons, it doesn't feel like a very feminist book unless you have all of the cultural context of like, well, this is what society actually was like in that time. So that's a very interesting topic that we can debate when we get there. But first, Kelly, can you just give me like your overall impression of the book, how you liked it?
Sure. If we want to go by the rating system that we started with, out of what is it, out of 10?
Yep, out of 10.
I would give it an 8.
Oh no.
So this was my first time reading the Joy Luck Club. I think I read The Bone Setter's Daughter in high school
Mhm.
for lit class. I remember basically none of it,
Okay,
honestly.
great.
But the Joy Luck Club, I was honestly I'm just like really hesitant and anxious reading anything that relates to like Chinese American culture where I know it's like very heavy and very context dependent on like history because I just everything that I have ever seen that is like a historical Chinese film
Hmm.
is just suffering,
Interesting.
and knowing that my parents also went through that, I'm just like it just is such a emotional burden to read through. This was better than I had anticipated.
Okay,
I
yeah.
think partially because like what you said, um so, like, my for reference, my parents grew up during the Cultural Revolution. A
Oh,
lot of what the mothers in this book went through, I think that was before the Cultural Revolution, so it was sort of a different
yeah.
time,
Hmm.
so it was a little bit less, like,
Yeah.
visceral, the suffering that they went through, but
Mhm.
still, like, definitely same vibes of, like, knowing that, "Oh, this is relatable in the sense that, oh, probably, like, my ancestors went through similar
Yeah.
things," and just the general sense of emotional trauma, generational trauma that the daughters go through.
Yeah.
It
Uh,
was just like I
mhm,
wasn't necessarily looking forward to reading the book in a lot of ways, if like
mm,
emotionally,
mhm.
but it was definitely less heavy than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I think a lot of it was like a little bit more metaphorical than what my brain is used to having
Mhm,
to interpret, and
mhm.
that always makes me a little bit, I guess, like, intellectually uncomfortable, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. So before we continue, just a brief cultural note, because not everyone knows the history of modern China necessarily. Um,
Mhm.
when we say the Cultural Revolution, what we're talking about is a period of time during the 60s and 70s when Mao Zedong was more or less the dictator of China, and uh for it's kind of complicated to explain, but basically he tried to purge a lot of the intelligentsia, like doctors and teachers and landlords and bureaucrats and all that sort of thing, from Chinese society in an effort to make society more proletariat friendly, more like working class friendly. How successful this was is a matter of intense historical debate, but for the most part, people remember the Cultural Revolution as a time period when a lot of people died for not very good reason, both from political violence and also things like famine. That's kind of the main two things that were happening during this time period. So when Kelly says that her parents were or went through the Cultural Revolution, that's what she's talking about. This book does not take place during the Cultural Revolution. It actually takes place during the previous era of Chinese history, during which the Japanese were invading China. I would actually say this is probably like the 30s and 40s, although it's a little unclear in the
Mhm.
timeline. Um,
I think it is the 30s and 40s. So it would
yeah,
have been
yeah,
like, or when did
because
World War One happen?
it has to be pre World War II. Yeah, so it must be like the
Yeah,
30s and 40s. Yeah,
yeah.
so this is a time period in Chinese history when China is kind of losing control of its own borders and its people, and just like the government is kind of falling apart. Japan's trying to take over, etc. So uh, the Cultural Revolution happens after the Japanese occupation of China. That's kind of China's effort to regain control of its own territory, whereas the time period in which large sections of the book are set is a time period when Japan is trying to take over China, and there's a lot of political turmoil for different reasons. That's like an outside force is trying to take over the country. Um, so that's kind of the historical backdrop through which this book is set. Um,
Mhm.
and
And for
yeah,
a little more context, like I think a lot of people might think of like communist China nowadays, but I don't know if a lot of people know like before communist China, like a lot of or some there was definitely some parts of China that were it's not westernized, but like definitely very modern and
mhm.
very like think of like luxury European vibes like that existed in China before the Cultural Revolution, and you do see some of that in this book as well.
Yeah, for sure. So more cultural background that's important to know is that China has a very, very strong urban slash rural split. So people who are from major cities that have major trading ports and such are generally much better off and have much better opportunity in life than people from the countryside. And a lot of the dynamics of this book come from the fact that the families being discussed are largely from the countryside. Which limits their prospects for social mobility and for general life fulfillment and stuff and some stuff like that. Um, and so the characters that are on that level are all kind of the mothers. There's four families the book talks about, four mothers and their daughters. And the mothers in question are living through this Japanese occupation period and going through all this turmoil uh, related to their lack of social mobility, etc. And the sections that talk about the daughters generally talk about their lives in America and their difficulties kind of navigating the relationship between their American life and their Chinese life, more or less. So we'll get into all of that in a second. But Kelly, can you tell me what your ultimate rating is for the book out of 10 if you have one?
Mm, I said 8 before. I think
Hmm,
I'll give it an 8.5.
8.5. Okay. And what would you say are like the things that are costing it points, so to speak? Why do you have minuses in there?
Um, for me, like I said before, just kind of like the and forgive me if I don't have the right vocabulary for this, but just the metaphoricalness
Hmm.
of some of the
Yeah,
stories.
for sure.
That a lot of that usually just goes over my head a little bit, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out what it all means, which I think probably is part of the point.
Mhm.
It's just sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to think for myself,
I get that. Yeah.
which my sister would probably have a lot of things to say to
Oh yeah.
that.
The book is very
um,
symbolism heavy, I would say. I think that's
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
the word you're looking for. And I agree with you.
Mhm,
I feel like to me the symbolism works really well. I think I rate the book a 10 out of 10, but it's
mhm,
kind of like a close 10 out of 10, if that's even
mhm,
possible. It's like maybe a 9.8. Uh, and it's like I can't even fully explain where the minus point two comes from. But
mhm.
so I'll say all the things that I like about it first. The book,
Sure.
I think, first of all, stylistically, does a really beautiful job of capturing the a language that is reminiscent of traditional Chinese culture in a way that's extremely difficult to do, I think, in English.
Mm,
Um, but like the language gives you a sense of like, how do I say this? one of the core themes of the book is the language split between the mothers and the daughters, where the mothers, of
Mhm,
course, speak primarily Chinese and the daughters speak primarily English, and the mothers can't really articulate what they want to say to the daughters. And there's almost like slightly humorous dialogue between them where like the the author like kind of like very accurately represents what a heavy Chinese accent sounds like on paper. She
mhm.
kind of like renders the mother speech in English as very awkward and clunky in a way that is like very authentic to how actual old Chinese people sound. And I know because I talk to a lot of old Chinese people in my life. um
I
and
do agree with
then
that point.
and then when you read the sections that are actually from the mother's perspectives, what you hear is like traces of this beautiful ancient language that Chinese is. Like you can really get a sense of like these are the things that they want to say. This is the immensely powerful storytelling voice that these mothers have. And if only they could if only they could speak Chinese to their daughters, they'd be able to transmit all of this weight, all of this cultural heaviness that they carry around. Um,
Mhm,
on a stylistic level, I think the book is excellent in a way that Asian American fiction often fails to be, in my opinion, because
mm,
Amy Tan has this ear for a traditional language that is difficult to come by. You need to study a lot of um, maybe works in translation or even original Chinese works to kind of approximate that voice. Um, so another thing is to your point, Kelly, it is a very symbolism heavy book, but to me the symbols work really well. And while
mhm,
I'm talking, am going to scroll through my notes to see if I can find a symbol very quickly. Um
mhm.
like uh isn't there a story about how I might fuck this up, but it's a one of the mothers tells a story about how like she was sitting by the lake and she sees like a turtle crying and the turtle's tears like when they land on the shore turn into like eggs and then the
Mhm.
eggs hatch and become cranes and then the cranes fly away and somehow this is supposed to be a metaphor for like swallowing your sorrow and
Yes. It was actually magpies. That was
okay, magpies, thank you. um
Anmei Su?
uh that sounds right, I'm not gonna check. um
Okay.
but okay, now that I think about it, this is probably one of the most insane pieces of the book where I also look at this and I'm like I'm not totally sure what this means. But I kind of
Although
yeah, mhm.
that is a really good example of just, like, how Chinese people talk and, like, the
Yeah.
idioms and
Mhm.
all the stories that a lot of the culture is based on and still uses.
Yeah, exactly. Like Chinese is such an old language that it has this incredibly rich history of like folk tales and maybe more formal writing, like cultural references that echo throughout literal millennia, honestly, in a way that like English doesn't really have. English doesn't have the same kind of continuity that Chinese does. Um, and so, like, when you read these sections, I think you kind of get lost sometimes in all of those metaphors. I think like an easier one. That one's insane. That was like the most insane metaphor. I also look at that and I'm like, I don't know what this means. Maybe chill.
Honestly, that was the one I related to the
Oh,
most,
really? Okay,
though.
we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a much easier one, which is this scene where uh Anmesu is a one of the mothers. She has her own mother who she's kind of estranged from because her mother remarried after her husband died. It's like a whole big thing. You're not supposed to do that in this culture.
Mhm.
But the mother comes back and like cuts herself to bleed into like a soup that she's making for her own mother, so Anmesu's grandmother. Um, and that is kind of like this uh really so at this point like the grandmother and the mother have been fighting for years, decades perhaps. Like they hate each other, or at least the grandmother hates the mother. It's a whole big thing. And but she comes back in this crucial moment when the grandmother is dying and literally like cuts herself, like cuts like a piece of her flesh into the soup for her mother, the grandmother, to eat. um and the this is the quote from that section that I love and that kind of like changed my life the first time I read it. This is how a daughter honors her mother. It is so deep it is in your bones. The pain of the flesh is nothing. The pain you must forget, because sometimes that is the only way to remember what is in your bones. You must peel off your skin and that of your mother and her mother before her until there is nothing, no scar, no skin, no flesh. I love that line. Um, and this is like metaphor when it actually works, in my opinion. Where
Mm,
it's like there I mean, you can't really explain symbols without ruining the magic a little bit, but I
mhm,
just love this kind of like physical representation of like filial slash mother daughter piety. Um,
mhm,
and the book is filled with lines like this and symbols like this that can be kind of hard to get your head around, but when it works, I think it really works. So anyway,
mm,
Kelly, this is a great place for us to talk about your relationship to that weird story with the turtle and the tears and the eggs and stuff. So you said you
mm.
really related to this one. Explain
Yeah,
yourself.
I need to remember what the eggs what were the eggs the bird eggs?
I think the turtle cried and then the tears became bird eggs. I think
Okay,
that's what happened.
let me go back to that chapter real quick. But in general,
Hmm.
so the part about the turtle, she referenced the turtle sitting at the bottom of the pond, I think once or
Hmm.
twice in
Yeah,
that chapter. And that really reminded me of one of my favorite and basically the only idiom that I remember in Chinese,
nice.
or the only idiom story that I remember in Chinese.
Hmm.
And so, for context, in Chinese, there are a lot of idioms that are 4 characters long. Um, they're called 成语, and they always have like a story and like a fable behind it that teaches a lesson. So there's one. Um, I never remember the actual um idiom, but it's about a frog that sits at the bottom of a well, and the frog is like, "Oh, this is my entire world. It's so great." One day, some other animal, I think maybe a turtle, passes by, and the frog wants to show off, like, "Hey, like this world of mine is so great." And then the turtle talks about, "Oh, here are all the other great things that exist in the universe that you have never seen." And the lesson is kind of that I took away from it at least was like, don't ever assume that you know everything about the world and that
Mm,
there's always more to learn.
yeah,
And let me look up the idiom. Frog at the well
this sounds familiar. I feel
is
like I've heard this before. Um,
井底之蛙. Um, okay, this is off Google Gemini
cool.
AI.
It's usually pretty
It
good for stuff like
is,
that.
yeah. A person with a very narrow, limited perspective who mistakes their small experience for the entire world.
Yes.
So that the part about the turtle reminded me about that, but the real focus of that section being swallowing your own bitterness
Hmm.
was very relatable to me because I feel like that whole general idea of like never complain about your circumstances and don't let other people witness your pain because they're just going to feed off of it and enjoy it. And I don't like thinking about this. I don't think I was ever explicitly taught that by my mom, but it was definitely just like I think it probably stemmed from just the general lesson of like don't complain about your circumstances, appreciate what you have. And I think that kind of led to just like the sense of swallow your own bitterness
Yeah.
and appreciate what you have even if you're suffering because it could be so much worse.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is like a common theme in Chinese culture, and one of the I think biggest contrasts between Chinese slash Eastern cultures and American culture is this sense of like obligation you have towards generally family members, sometimes your broader community as well, where in Asian cultures, it's very much expected that you will sacrifice large parts of your time, money, energy, self for the sake of your family. Um, and that's kind of the force that brings a lot of these mothers to America in the first place, the sense of uh, the sort of desire to do the best thing for their families, and also themselves, kind of. There's a funny there's a funny story that I don't quite remember who told me, but um there was like an Asian American girl who said something about how she um like is so like thankful to her parents for coming to America to give her a better life. And then I think like a friend of mine like told her parents about that and was like, "Oh, thank you as well," like this Asian American girl said. And the parents were like, "We did it mostly for us. Like we're glad you benefited from this, but this was mostly so that we could get rich," which I thought was very funny. That feels like a very that's a China that I know. That's maybe a very Cantonese logic. But
Interesting. Because that was not the story I ever got from my parents.
yeah, that's the kind of thing that my parents would say or my grandparents would say. Um,
Mm,
but still, there's like there is like this sort of trend towards like having deep obligation towards your parents, parents especially, but your family in general. And in America, it's much easier to break off from your family unit, kind of like in a cultural sense. Like it's almost expected that you'll be independent at some point. It's kind of expected that like you don't necessarily owe things to your parents, like you don't have to pay them back for what they how they supported you. um and uh so it's for Asian American kids, it's a very, very complicated topic, I think. And that's kind of the major tension that drives the daughters in this book, I think. They feel torn between their loyalty to their families and their desire to live basically happy American lives. Although I kind of hesitate to use that description for reasons that we'll get into later. But basically,
mm,
preview, I think that the narrative that America is progress and China slash the home country is regression. I don't love that narrative, but I will talk about that more later. Um, so I
mm,
want to talk about my own life now because obviously I'm also part Chinese, half Korean, half Chinese, and so like I have like personal resonance with a lot of this stuff. Something that I personally like struggle with a lot is the idea of like owing my family for supporting me and like trying having to pay them back, quote unquote. Because what's like weird about my family is that if I were to ask them explicitly, like, how much do I owe you, they would say nothing. Like, we did this all for you, whatever.
mhm,
Um, like they're very generous with me when it comes to financial support, which I'm very grateful for. But obviously, we get into conflict as well. And it's not until we get into conflict that it turns out, oh, actually, the financial support is not exactly unconditional because now this is
mhm,
leverage that we have over you emotionally when we argue about something. Like, oh, we bought you this thing, we
mm.
supported you in this way, we've given you this much money over the years. Why are you
The
like,
emotional leverage is real.
yes. This is the very sneaky sort of way that Asian parents maintain control of their children. Um, so it's tough. And it's a thing that I've had to deal with for a long time, and I don't have a conclusion. I was just talking. Do you have Kelly say something?
But yeah, no, I definitely relate to that too. It's like not explicitly owing them monetarily, but
Mhm.
definitely that sense of familial obligations, filial piety, that sense of we raised you to have a good life and we expect you to be around to take care of us as we grow old
Yeah.
as repayment, basically.
Hmm. And this is
And
yeah.
that, like, literally, my mom has literally said that to me, like, "We expect you to take care," like, her whole point of, "We have kids so that we have someone to take care of us when we're old."
Yeah. And this is a very sharp contrast from American culture where the like the trend in America is that you basically, even if you're a parent, you're kind of on your own for retirement and you should have like your own retirement savings. You should have your like own everything should be sorted out for yourself on your end. And your kids are not really obliged culturally to do anything for you.
Yeah,
Very
and even
sharp
this, like,
contrast. Mhm.
living apart, not
Yeah.
like all staying in the same house, which is very common
Mhm.
in China. I think even now, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is how my family lived too. Like my grandmother on my mom's side, when she was still alive, lived with us, I think, or at least next. I think she lived next door to us, possibly. Um, and so like I grew up seeing her pretty much every day before she died. Um,
Mm.
and then I look at my own future and I'm like, oh God, am I going to have to like let my parents move in with me when I get older?
Mm.
I don't want that. We don't get along like at all. Um,
Mm.
what also complicates it for me is that I think I want to move to Korea at some point. Um,
Mhm.
and that obviously will make it harder to live with
That
my
is fair,
parents.
yeah. I do think about that a lot, like,
Yeah.
how my parents moving
Hmm.
here affected their relationships with their parents.
Yeah.
I think their parents definitely supported them coming here,
Hmm.
um, but, like, just reflecting on, like, my grandparents all passed in the 2010s,
Mm.
and I think it definitely was, like, really tough, especially on my mom, to, like, not be there for them,
Yeah.
especially because like, she was kind of the most responsible one in the family
Mm.
and wanted to be there for her parents, and she wasn't able to be there in person as much as she probably would have liked to, and it's just, like,
Yeah.
thinking about all of that trauma and emotional burden is just a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting thinking about it and sort of seeing how like that culture of filial piety and having to take care of your parents kind of like ties you down in some ways where in
For
America
sure.
like the culture is very free. Like I moved from New York to Minnesota a couple years ago and I'm about to move to California and I'm probably going to move a third time to Korea. So I kind of just move around constantly and do whatever. And that's not something you can do if you have to stay near or around your parents so that you can take care of them. Um, and it's America is a very free country in that sense, in the sense that like it's almost expected that you'll go out and explore and do interesting, crazy things and kind of like live a crazy, chaotic life where you live all different places and do all different things. And then at some point, you reach a point where you're like, oh, well, I think I'm tired of adventures. I think I want to settle down somewhere. Um, but there's a lot of room for that sort of thing in America that there certainly was not in the China that these families grew up in. And
Mhm.
even now in current China, there's I think it's better like I mean, mostly I talk to my international friends, so obviously they're the ones who found a way out. Um,
Mm.
but
Fair.
but I do think that it's easier to get tied down in a culture where community and family are so important.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially, like, going back to the book, just the society that the mothers grew up in
Mhm.
where, like, they, to my understanding, like, they were completely dependent on their husbands for
Yeah.
monetary support.
Mhm.
They did have some freedom to, like, go wherever they pleased if their husbands were willing. Like, they could, like, go on vacation with their kids to,
Yeah.
like, their, I don't know, lakeside property, and it would be fine, but otherwise, like, they didn't really have much freedom
Yeah.
to explore or, like, build their own lives beyond just being housewives.
Yeah. There was a very interesting part of the book. Sorry, I have to clear my throat. There was a very interesting part of the book where I think one of the mothers, I think it was whoever St. Clair was, Ying Ying
Ying Ying?
St. Clair. Um,
Mhm.
she was the fourth wife, I guess, of a very successful merchant, I think. Something like that, right?
Let me double
Was
check.
this the same character?
I know Anmei's mom was the 4th wife
Oh, it might have been
of
on May.
a merchant.
I think I got it wrong. I think it should be on May Su. On May
I
Su.
think Ying Ying married the guy who, like, stabbed a watermelon in front of her and left.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I remember. That guy was weird. That
Yeah.
that was that was crazy. I never thought a watermelon could be so sexual. Um,
Nope.
okay, so I got the character wrong. It's actually Anmesu. Anmesu is apparently the fourth wife of a very successful merchant, and
No, her mom is.
yeah, what? No, no, Anmei is wait. No, no, no. You're right. You're right. Anmei's mom is the, the fourth wife. Anmei is a mother character, but she has her own mother. So that would be Rose Sue Jordan's grandmother. This book is so confusing.
Yes.
There's so many
There's a
characters.
lot going on.
um, she's the fourth wife of a merchant, and apparently, like this merchant has like just like bought extra properties to just like send his other wives to at some point. And I was like, that's
Mhm,
crazy. You have to be
mhm,
so rich to do that. And also,
mhm,
what's the point of doing that? Like, I've never had multiple wives before, so I don't fully understand the politics there. But I feel like if I marry someone just to like buy them a property and then send them to that property and just like not really interact with them, I don't think I fully understand why I decided to marry them. I don't
mhm.
I don't quite get that. Maybe just so I can have sex with them sometimes. But you can also do that without buying people property, but I guess not in that society. Anyway, that's not really a thing relevant to anything else. That's just a thing I was thinking about. What were we talking about before that?
Um,
It was probably more interesting than whatever that tangent was.
that is a really good question. I have lost
Okay.
my thought as well.
All right. I'm gonna come back to the thing that I foreshadowed before. Um,
Sure.
so this may be like a topic for debate we can have, and we don't necessarily have to take sides, but
Mhm,
I think that from this book, it is very easy to take away an impression that America is a very sort of modern, progressive place where you can be successful and marry whoever you want and do whatever you want. And China is like this weird, backwards, esoteric place where women like have their husbands chosen for them by by their families, and you have to have a husband in order to have any money. Um, and like your whole like life course is determined at birth, etc., etc. So, well, okay, initial question, Kelly, do you get that
mhm.
impression from this book? I'm kind of straw manning, but I'm curious like what your response to that concept is. Obviously I disagree, but we'll get to that after.
I don't think I immediately took that
Hmm.
conclusion away, but it's also because I've been to
Hmm.
China and like I know what it's like there, so it's not my immediate impression. Although on that topic, I was very amused by in the last chapter when June Woo goes to China,
Yeah,
and this is like probably like the 1980s at this point, right? In the story. And
probably.
her travel agent puts her and her dad up in a hotel that looks absolutely glamorous, like
Yeah.
marble
Hmm.
everywhere, super fancy technology for the time, and she's like, "This is communist China?" And I just had a field day with that. I don't know how to
Yeah.
articulate it right now, but that was just really funny to me, just, like, reflecting on kind of today's society where, like, when TikTok was about to be banned, everyone fled to what was it, Little Red Notebook,
Yes.
and started interacting, like, I assume, like, white Americans who have not really interacted with Asians or definitely not international Asians before,
Yeah.
and them interacting with Chinese people, mainlanders, and being like, "Wow, like, we're so similar, like, they're just people."
That is really
That
funny.
just
Yeah.
June's reaction just really gave me that same impression and the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
vibes.
You know what's funny?
Um
I remember that period of our cultural zeitgeist, but I
Mhm,
think I didn't quite process how like how bizarre that must have been for the white people who were on that trend. Because like I've like
Mm,
we were in the wushu club together. We have like a
mhm,
fair number of international friends. I keep making them.
mhm,
Like every time I meet like an international student or someone who like
mhm,
came from China, like we pretty much immediately become good friends because like I we just see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
mhm,
And so like for me, I was like, oh yeah, that's probably where like other international people are. That makes sense. But then like
mhm,
for an American who probably has never talked to like a Chinese person who lives in China or has lived in
mhm,
China, that must be insane. It must be like, oh my God,
mhm,
there's like people there. They use words. It's psychotic.
mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
um, do you I am also curious, Kelly, did you feel
Mhm.
like that story of the hotel being like super super nice but also really cheap, does that still bear true? Because I'm pretty sure they'd be more expensive now.
I think compared to my trip back there last May, I
Mhm.
think definitely not
Yeah.
the same level of cheap anymore. I don't think it's as expensive as the US or Europe still, but definitely not like dirt cheap.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Just curious. Uh, Nowadays, if I am going to go to China or and also Korea, I kind of just expect all the amenities to be slightly nicer because America, I'm kind of like, it's so lame here. There's nothing interesting.
Mm. I
Uh,
will say I don't think we stayed in like nicer hotels in Shanghai
mhm,
and Guangzhou. I do remember like the Holiday Inn that we stayed at in Shanghai. This was maybe 2010. Like on average, like even though it's a Holiday Inn, it was still like really nice to me
hmm,
compared to all the Holiday Inns I've stayed at in the US up
I
to that
see.
point,
Yeah,
which was interesting.
cool. Um, the last thing I'll add before I circle back to actual literary conversation is that when I was in Korea, um it was pretty common to or there was a place where I could order like food from like a tablet, which is already pretty advanced. Not a lot of places in America can do that, but the tablet also
Mhm.
had like games on it, like little mini games you could play, and you could also
Ah.
challenge other tables to mini games to play
Oh,
with
wait, that's
them.
really fun.
And I was like, you just can't get this in America. We're just not advanced
No.
enough. um
I've seen the tablets at, like, Applebee's and Red
mhm,
Lobster, but they're
yeah.
really glitchy.
And they probably don't have any games.
They do have the games, but you can't order from
Oh.
them. You can only pay.
Oh, well then what's the point? Anyway,
Exactly.
anyway,
Anyway.
this book, I think the takeaway that's you may mistakenly get from this book, and actually that I think I saw like a couple people on Reddit get from this book, which is why I'm talking about
Mhm,
it now, because I saw it on
mhm,
Reddit, is this concept that like China is like weird and backwards and America is progressive. But I think what this book does is uh there's this concept that I'm starting to develop in my brain of what I guess I would call it like the noisy America, if and I'll explain myself because that sounds crazy. But
mhm,
it's the idea that living in America is so like modern stuff in general like occupies so much of your attention, and everything is happening so quickly, and there's so much stimulus in America, and also
mhm,
like China and Korea are becoming like this as well. There's so much stimulus. They've got your social media, you're always shopping, you have to like work constantly, not constantly, but like your 8 hours a day is pretty draining. um there's just a lot going on, and also everyone is just like has very loud strong opinions in America, which
mhm,
inevitably like leads you to also have loud strong opinions. Uh Not, I guess not inevitably, but it kind of like you absorb this culture, and there's just so noisy everywhere, that you can't hear like what I would call like the sound of like your traditional culture that you came from. Um,
mm,
and I think this book does a really good job of capturing this disparity that I feel, where the American girls are just like pulled apart in so many directions by so much different stimulus that they lose track of this kind of like core calling back to the homeland, and back to
Mhm.
like tradition and like the sort of calling to the continuity from which they came. Um, this is like maybe better articulated in, not better, but like maybe more like finely or acutely articulated in a movie that I watched recently, actually on the plane back from Korea, which was recommended to me by a new friend that I made in Korea, which is called Past Lives, or Inyeon. If you speak Korean, you know what that is. Um, this is a movie about a Korean girl who lived in Seoul until she was 12 years old, then moved to America with her family. And she had like a childhood crush in Korea who she lost touch with, but they kind of like cross paths again a couple of times over the course of their lives. And it's sort of watching their like relationship develop, not really in a way of like, oh, they're going to be friends forever now, but more so just like how this man to her is like this calling back to an old life that she once had, and how well, okay. The most salient part of the movie is a scene in which the Korean girl and her white boyfriend, I think he's Jewish, are like lying in bed and talking. And they're talking about how the boyfriend is expressing like his lament over the fact that there's this like deep buried part of her that he can never access, which is the Korean part of her. Um,
Mm.
and like it's like almost like she has like this secret world inside of her memories in Korea, the language that she speaks, all this cultural stuff that she has inside. Um,
Mhm.
and the girl, for her part, is trying to reassure him, like, yes, I really do love you. I want to spend my life with you. Like, this is my life. I'm American. I'm in America with you. We're together, etc., etc. But the sort of like the movie sort of positions her so that she constantly has this feeling of being called back to Korea in a very like quiet way. Like the Korean guy that she had a crush on like keeps coming back into her life at weird times, and she has like
Mm.
this familiarity with him that she doesn't have with anyone else in the movie. um
Mhm.
and the sense of like being called back, but like you can't quite hear that you're being called back because there's just, your life is just so busy, there's so much going on. That I think is like that certainly the key point, arguably the only point of Past Lives, and I think also something that appears in the Joy Luck Club. um and maybe we can talk about the first girl, Jing Mei Woo, as like a
Mhm.
good example of this, where like
Mhm.
she spends her like life story is mostly about disappointing her parents almost on purpose because she doesn't believe that she's a prodigy, and she thinks that her parents want her to be a prodigy. um and she like kind of resists, like her parents like try to make her do piano lessons, and she's like, I hate piano, I don't want to do this, and she like bombs on purpose almost so she doesn't have to do piano anymore.
Mhm.
um and sorry, I was looking at my notes for Jingmei and I have a lot of funny stuff to say, but I'll do that after. Um, but she has like this resistance to like kind of the Chinese aspect of the Chinese things that are influencing her to like try to excel, etc., etc. um, but then, like, what she finds in her mid 30s is that she feels very lost. It's like she finally has what she wants, which is that her parents don't have high expectations of her anymore, and she kind of can just like drift around and do whatever she wants. But then she finds that like she doesn't quite know what she wants to do. I think like she like is constantly like going to school and then dropping out and then changing majors and then going back, etc., etc. That's like a whole thing that she's doing. Um, and she's very lost. She doesn't have a lot going on in her life. And then she kind of gets called back to the homeland, right? Because the sort of like first thing that we learn in this book is that Jing Mei's mother, Suyen, is dead. She dies pretty much at the beginning of the book. um or like the first chapter is about the aftermath of her death, I should say. um
Mhm.
and so her mother dies at the same time that the mother is trying to find like her long lost daughters that she left behind in China. um Again, this is like a whole big thing to explain, but basically she had some babies during the Japanese occupation. When she was fleeing the Japanese, from the Japanese army, she had to leave the babies behind because she was so tired. Um, and she's been trying to find the babies ever since, but she dies before she can find them. It's tragic. But right around the same time that she dies, someone does find them and like reaches out to her. And now Jingmei has to like carry the torch, so to speak, to like make contact with the former babies who are now, I guess, her half sisters. Um, anyway, all that long story short, Jingmei has this calling back to the homeland, and if you are going to summarize the book in a single character's arc, I think it's the arc of Jingmei like learning about her mother's past, reconnecting with her culture, going back to China, meeting these long lost sisters, and finding a sense of integration back to the culture that she came from, if that all makes sense. Um, and so this book too has like this theme of um, being called back to the homeland and reconnecting with it. And it ends differently from past lives, where in past lives, like at the end, basically the girl just kind of goes back to her husband and is like, well, I'm sad today. And the husband's like, okay, that's okay. And that's pretty much, it's not a very satisfying ending, but also kind of has to be that way because of the way the movie's constructed. And in this book, of course, Jingmei reconnects with her half sisters, and there's kind of like this automatic understanding that they have of like, you know, maybe because like, the sisters probably don't speak very good English. Jingmei's Chinese is not, you know, super great, but they have like this instant connection of like we are family. And presumably they kind of like mean it's kind of like a completion of Jingmei's sense of emptiness, so to speak. Um, so anyway, that to me is like the thing that I took away the most from the Joy Luck Club. It's the idea that your homeland is calling out to you constantly, but in a very quiet voice. And if your life is very busy and chaotic, you can't really hear that call. But when you are still and calm, and you are not so like preoccupied with the day to day of your life in America, you can hear that call. You can hear like that, you can hear the homeland trying to pull you back in. At least that's how I feel, which again is why I went to Korea. And maybe this is a great time to talk about Korea, actually, now that I think about it. I referenced this several times at this point, but I just got back like a week ago from a 2 week long trip to Korea, which was excellent in many ways, including eating a lot of good Korean food, getting better at the language, and
Ooh.
making a bunch of new Korean friends. Um, but the biggest one is a sense of belonging that I felt while I was there. Um, Not with everybody necessarily. Koreans, probably more so than any other Asian culture, are extremely insular and do not like outsiders. And I am an outsider in Korea, as much as I hate to say it, but it's true. Um, so, but like with the people who were open to me and like were willing to sit through my shitty Korean while I tried to express my thoughts, like I felt so comfortable and at home with these people in a way that is extremely rare for me to find in America. Um,
Mm.
and so in a sense, like I just have gone through my Jingmei arc where like I heard the call back to the homeland. I heard it when I was in college, which was now almost 10 years ago. Um, but I didn't get a chance to actually do everything until just now. But I went and I felt it, and now I came back and I'm here. So this is like what I think about my life too. I hear this call back to Korea, and I plan to move back when I can, which is going to be terrible news for us recording, but I think we might be able to make it work still.
Mhm.
We'll see. Um,
We'll make it
but
work, I
yeah.
believe.
Um, so I feel this calling back to Korea. I feel like this desire to reconnect to the culture. I feel very happy when I hear the Korean language, even if I don't necessarily understand what's being said. Just like seeing Korean words written down or hearing Korean being spoken, like makes me really happy. Um, and yeah, like that's like the weight of the Joy Luck Club for me, where
Mhm.
it captures on paper the feeling that I have of being called back. And I think that's why I kind of end up giving it a 10 out of 10 because it says something that resonates so deeply with me. Um,
Mhm.
I mentioned something about a minus like zero point 0.2 at some point, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure
Mhm.
exactly where that comes from. I think maybe it's the fact that the I think I don't. love the dynamic with the white boyfriends that all of the Chinese girls
Ah,
have.
yes.
I think there's something to be
Yes.
said about that. But
Mhm.
anyway, before I go on another tangent, do you have anything? Did you think of anything after I talked for the last 20 minutes that you want to say before we go on another journey?
Yeah, just to bounce off the idea that you of the American noise, I think that's a really astute point of I don't know if this comes from, like, also kind of how I've been trying to navigate life, but the sense of, oh, there's always so much in American culture trying to tell you, like, who you should be, what you should do, what success means,
Yeah.
and on the other side, like, the I guess, in a way, the culture of the mothers in this book are like, "Oh, like, it doesn't matter what you do, but you should hold these core values."
Hmm.
But that's also kind of hypocritical and a little bit, um, juxtaposed by kind of, like, their daughters, at least, like, kinda, like, in the sense of Waverly being a chess prodigy and June feeling pressure to become a prodigy in something, like, feeling like they are being told what to do and how
Yeah.
to live their lives.
Hmm.
But it comes from a different place of, "These are the values we want you to uphold,"
Yeah.
versus something more superficial that I guess you could describe the American culture as.
Yeah, the way I would phrase it, with and especially with June and the piano, is that it's not really
Mhm,
about the piano. It's not that your parents want you to be a piano prodigy. It doesn't have to be
mhm,
piano. And she like goes through different things. It could be dancing, it could be studying, it could be whatever you want. It's more so the concept of like whatever it is you choose to do, just do your goddamn best at it. Just try.
mhm,
Just try as hard as you can at whatever it is. And even if you're not a prodigy, even if you aren't as good as Waverly, like I'm speaking from the perspective of the parents here, even if you're not a
mhm,
prodigy, as long as you are trying your best at something, you are holding on to like this core like value that we have that we're trying to impart onto you. Um, and I'll talk shit about my parents all day, but I will say one way or another, they did manage to impose this value on me successfully, and now it's something that I
mhm,
value a lot too. Whenever there's something for me to try hard at, I try extremely
mhm.
hard. Um, Unfortunately, I've almost always seemed to choose things that don't really make me a lot of money, but that's a different conversation. But anyway, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like it's about like that value of trying your hardest at things that June resists for so long that like it almost defines her life how much she resists it. Uh,
Mhm.
that's not an easy thing to bring across, especially over a language barrier. But I
Yeah.
agree, that's kind of like this core Chinese value that for some reason keeps coming up again and again. And it does create an environment where, as a child, you feel this intense pressure to live up to these seemingly incredibly unrealistic expectations. But I think at some point when you get older, you realize like it was never really about meeting those expectations. It was just about like trying to get you to push yourself to be the best version of yourself. And that's
Mhm,
something that like somehow one way or another I got, and I'm very glad that I got it. And it kind of like defines who I am today.
mhm. Yeah, I would say I'm in the same boat. Like, I am very grateful
Yeah.
for the values that my parents instilled in me and just
Hmm.
the grit and the hard work
Yeah.
and just keep going at it to get what you want.
Yeah.
That sense. The other thing that I wanted to go circle back to, just like addressing your original question of, does this book convey the idea of China being backwards versus America being progressive? I
Yeah.
can understand it if someone without context for Chinese culture and reading this from like a perspective of, oh, I want to understand what Chinese culture is like, could see that
Hmm.
and could get that conclusion. But for me, the core focus of the book was that sense of trying to relate to your mother and your cultural identity when you grow up in a separate place.
Mhm.
from where your parents did and that language barrier, and that was really the focus that I had when I was reading the book is trying to contextualize, like, my fraught relationship with my mother
Yeah.
in terms of, like, she has, like, a very limited mindset and, like, talks about a very limited set of things, and it is very frustrating. I have endured a lot of frustration about it over the years, but
Mhm.
in trying to, like, trying to, like, figure out some relationship with her where I'm not just constantly annoyed and frustrated,
Yeah.
and kind of arriving at this place of, okay, like, I'm trying to understand kinda like what, Amy Tan's what was it, preface was talking about,
Mhm.
like, I want to show her that I am listening to her and I am trying to
Mm.
understand, like, her perspective, and I feel like that's really the center of the book is, like, the navigating the really frustrating and complicated relationship between an American daughter and a Chinese mom with language barriers, and
Yeah.
how do you come away from that with a mutual understanding of what each other is about and what values you uphold and how to carry on a legacy.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
that's the focus of the book to me, which I feel like is definitely, like, the point of the book beyond the Chinese culture and Chinese history, but I could understand if you're a white American not having a lot of cultural context, you could just read it from that perspective to be like, "I'm trying to get cultural knowledge," when that's, I don't think, really the point of this book.
Yeah. I hmm. This is a great segue to the thing I said before about the white boyfriends. There is
Mm.
a kind
Yes,
of
let's talk about that.
yes. I am currently trying to arrange all the thoughts in my head. I'm just gonna start talking though.
Mhm.
I think I think this book must be a really strange read to anyone who's not Chinese. I think it's probably pretty difficult to get your head around everything that's going on. Um,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
'Cause, like, the whole, like, theme of the book, like we said, is, like, this gap between the things that you hear your mother and, I guess your parents say in their weird broken English versus the weight that you know that they must be carrying of all of the different things that they wish they could say to you. And that's something that, like, as a white person who grew up in America, like, I mean, there are like white immigrant families, of course, but if your whole family all speaks the same language, you don't know what that's like. You don't know what it's like to have a family member who is trying to talk to you and trying to explain something deep and complicated to you, but who can't do it because they don't speak the same language as you. And if they try to do it in their own language, you won't understand because you're not very strong in the language either. Um,
Mhm.
I'm actually
Or
very,
even
yeah, mhm,
maybe speaking the same language, but just having very different cultural or, like, historical
that
backgrounds,
too.
like,
Yeah.
one growing up poor and then the kid growing up relatively well off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And in a way, like I've almost dodged this to an extent because most of my family speaks quite good English, and I think I'm closer to them as a result. There, I have some family members who speak mostly Chinese, but like my grandmother, my direct grandmother, speaks very good English. She can talk to pretty much anybody. She understands basically everything I say. Um, uh, the times she doesn't understand me are usually because her hearing is going, but that's
Mm,
she doesn't care. She's kind of
different
like,
story.
I didn't want to hear you anyway, is what she always says. Um, but anyway, yeah, I think like the major theme, I think one of the big themes in this book is watching all of the ways in which the white characters of the book just completely whiff everything about the Chinese stuff. Um, like I think one of my favorite exchanges is Waverly is one of the daughters, and her mom is Linda Zhang. Um, and Waverly has a white boyfriend who probably soon to be husband named Rich, who comes
Mhm.
over one day and just he just bombs every single part of every single social interaction. So it's stuff like saying, uh, Lindo, the mom, will say something like, "Oh, I think like I didn't make like put enough salt in the food or whatever," and the idea is that it's like, oh, as the chef, she's trying to like talk herself down so that other people will compliment her. It's like a social mind game sort of thing. That's like makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense if you're Chinese, I
And,
think.
like,
It's
mixed or faux or not faux humility.
yeah, yeah. It's like you're kind of pretending to be humble, but you're secretly fishing for compliments. And it's just this fun game we all play. But Rich kind of just like agrees with her and is like, yeah, I guess it could use more salt, and then just like dumps soy sauce on the dish, like a bunch, like a lot of soy sauce. Um, and everyone's looking at him like, oh my god, you don't understand what's going on here. And at the end of the dinner, he's like talking to Waverly, and he's like, I think that was great. I think that was awesome. I think I nailed that whole interaction. And she's just like, Jesus fucking Christ. Um, so that was very fun. Uh, that's like a funny example of it, but I do think that like there is this gap between, you know, if you're an Asian girl dating a white guy, the white guy, like, there's just a lot missing that you just can't quite explain all the way.
Mhm.
Like all this like cultural stuff and context and whatever. That's why it really surprised me to read about people who I'll explain myself in a bit. Uh on Reddit, there are people who were saying that they don't like how the book has like this white worship angle, and like the white guys in the book are like so much better and nicer than the Chinese guys, and how this is terrible representation for Asian American men. Uh, and I read this and I was like, did we read the same book? And to be fair, I think the thread was talking about the movie, so maybe the movie is worse for this.
Mm.
So I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt. I could very well just be making up a person to get mad at, but this is the impression that I got from reading the discourse online very briefly, not in depth. But and so I think we're on the same page here when I say that the white boys in this book are not particularly sensitive to the cultural issues at play here, which simultaneously is kind of part of their charm. I think like if you are an Asian girl dating a white guy, I would hazard a guess that the fact that they don't know anything about these social mind games is kind of nice, because that means you don't have to worry about it either. Um, but then like they meet your family, then like they are just like oblivious to things that you say and think all of the time. And you kind of realize like, ah man, there's a big like cultural gap here that's kind of hard to bridge. um
Mhm.
which is also what happened in Past Lives, but I'm not going to rehash all of that right now. I think a part of this book that really stood out to me, um that I'm probably going to think about this for many many years. Um, but Ying Ying St. Clair, also known as Gu Ying Ying, the mother of Lena St. Clair. This is the lady. This is the lady with the watermelon story. Don't worry about the watermelon story if you don't know what I'm talking about. Um, but Ying Ying St. Clair marries a white guy, and so Lena St. Clair is halfy. She's half Chinese, half some fucking white. I don't know what kind of white she is. Um,
I wanna say Irish?
Her name is St. Clair, which sounds Irish to
Sinclair,
me,
yeah, I think she's Irish. I remember distinctly a passage about her dad eating, like, eggs and bacon for breakfast even at, like, 70 something, and then he died of his arteries were clogged or something.
which is a very Irish thing to do, as we all know. Um, so anyway,
Anyway, continue.
Ying St. Clair marries a white guy, and I guess her English never quite like manifests over the course of her life, and so her husband always kind of like, how do I say this? Her husband always speaks for her, or like infers how she must be feeling. Or he'll say things like, I think she's trying to say she's hungry, or I think she's tired, and he'll always like put words in her mouth in this way. um and it's very harrowing, I would say. It's a almost like depressing part of the book where like her this mother's voice is like erased by the fact that she has a husband who, by virtue of being a white American, speaks for her a lot of the time. um And in a sense, she kind of loses her own voice over the course of her life. And by the time we meet her during the American sections of the book, she has basically no voice at all. She's kind of we know what her internal world is like because we see things from her perspective, but like by the time she is in America, she kind of goes insane, I think, over the course of the book. She also had
Mm,
a miscarriage and that drove her even more insane. It's a whole
mm,
thing that you got to read it. It's crazy. Um but I I don't know. It's very haunting to me, the idea of like losing your language to that extent and being so
mhm.
incapable of expressing things for yourself.
Yeah. No, that's definitely real, and that's a really good point that you made, that he, like, insisted that she speak more English, but he
Yeah.
didn't make an effort to learn more
Hmm.
Chinese than whatever he knew while doing business
Yeah.
in China.
Hmm.
And yeah, it just kind of perpetuates that sense of, and this directly contradicts, like, people's, uh, impression that, "Oh, China is backwards," but, like, his treatment of her in that way just kind of perpetuates the idea of, oh, like, women are reliant on their husbands for everything,
Hmm.
and, like, she doesn't have her own voice or her own choices.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much um, like the husband in this case, whose name I forgot, it must have been said at some point. Um, but the husband is like kind of maybe not just as bad, but similarly bad as like a lot of the Chinese men in the story who, there's a lot of shitty Chinese men in this book who
Mhm.
are extremely misogynistic and benefit from the patriarchy in ways that they are extremely uncritical of, etc., etc. Um, but Ying Sinclair's husband is the same, and also Lena's husband is kind of the same. So Lena is the daughter of Ying Sinclair, and she marries an American man as well. And his name is Arnold, I think. That's what it says in my
Uh,
notes.
no, Arnold was
Nope.
the kid
Nope. Arnold is
that
the kid.
died.
I just saw a name and I just said it out loud. Wasn't his name like
No
Harold or
worries.
something?
I think it was Harold, actually,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Were they both architects?
Yes, they are both
And then
architects. They worked at the
they
same
have a
architecture firm. Then the guy
weird
started his own firm. Sorry.
yes.
Uh and then she works at the firm as well, the one her husband
Mhm,
owns, but she like
mhm,
doesn't get promoted. And at first it's because the husband is like, I don't want there to be favoritism. But then at some point it's like this is getting ridiculous. I probably should have
mhm,
been promoted. But they also don't talk about it because that's the kind of thing you don't talk about in a marriage, I guess, when it's a little bit fragile. Um, so they kind of resent each other for that. There's also like a financial dynamic of like
mhm,
them trying to split everything like evenly or fairly, and it being like a stress point for Lena because it's like, ah. I like it feels like this is helping me be independent, but actually it's just a weight that's dragging down our marriage and my life, etc., etc.
mhm,
Um, I don't know if I have a point to all this. I think the point I'm trying to make is that um, American men, as portrayed in the book, the sort of like benefit of dating a white guy that I think, again, this is all in the context of the Joy Luck Club. I'm not going to speak for actual real white men that exist in the world. But in the context of the book, I think the impression that we get is that dating an American man is great as long for the sense. From this perspective of like being free of the cultural baggage that comes with being Asian, in a way, it's very liberating to not have to worry about a language barrier and not have to worry about all the obligations that come with being in a culture that's obsessed with filial piety. Um, and so there's a kind of escape from all of that stuff in your white boyfriend, but also there's a kind of like um, it's exhausting to be with someone who is A, so ignorant of your culture, and B, so in Korean it would be like numchi opso. Like you don't have social awareness.
mm,
Like um in the way that like Lena's husband like kind of just doesn't understand like her emotions, I guess. Like he tries to be very fair when it comes to dividing their finances, and like they communicate when it comes to the practical stuff a lot, but there's a kind of like emotional ignorance he has when it comes to Lena's position. And same thing with someone like Rich. Rich and Waverly in this book have a really good relationship, it seems like, but Rich is very oblivious, I think, to like the finer nuances of Waverly's life as a Chinese person. um,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a point of contention between uh, Rich and the family. And like Waverly is caught between these two things because Waverly has like extremely high social awareness. She's probably the best at this of the four daughters. And so she is like almost like I don't know exactly how you would say it, like very embarrassed or very um like it's a big deal for her that he's so bad at this. I don't think she ever quite articulates it this way in the book, but you can feel like in the way that she's written as a character, like that she's
Mhm.
very very frustrated by the fact that her husband is just so oblivious to these things. um so anyway,
I thought
yeah.
I guess I saw that more as her worrying that her mom wouldn't accept him though, not
mm,
as much as, "Oh, I want him to fit in."
mm, you are right, that is what she says. I might be projecting a little bit. um
Which is also okay. That is also fair.
that is kind of what books are for, to project onto. um
Mm,
But yeah, it's true. Her character is more says what she says is more along the lines of like he's like, I really hope my mom likes him. I really hope he can integrate with our family well and stuff like that. So maybe this is my own frustration coming in. I do think that she's probably frustrated just because she's Waverly and she seems easily frustrated by a lot of things. Um, I love Waverly. I think she's my favorite character. Actually, yeah, I have to talk about chess after this because we've released the chess prodigy. Um, but she, um, yeah, the the premise still holds. I think of like having dating a white guy, kind of like there's just a big cultural gap, and generally speaking, they're gonna be like a little bit lower on the social awareness scale. And these are things that you have to contend with when you date a white guy. And does the book, in my opinion, does not make it out that white guys, but white guys are just better than Asian guys. I think that's a very very reductive way to frame things. But also, that's kind of a straw man because I'm not sure the people who said that were talking about the book. Anyway,
mm,
that's the end of that train of thought, I think.
mhm. I think that's a really good point to make,
Good.
regardless
Thank
of
you for
whether it
validating me.
was in the movie or the book, because I'm sure there are people who probably will see that as
I'm
well.
sure there are some teenagers who read this book uh who got the same thing from the book. Anyway, uh, should I talk about chess? I think I'll try to limit the chess talk because I could talk about chess for a really long
Mm.
time. Um, uh, Waverly is a chess product. Oh man, what should I? Okay, I like chess. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I played a lot of chess when I was in college. I got reasonably good at it. I'm not as good as Waverly, although Waverly is a fictional character, but she's a fictional character that has like many, many real life analogs, and I am worse than all of them, all of those real life analogs. But anyway, I like chess. I like the game. I think it's fun. Um, I think the book actually, in reading the book, I started playing chess again, and now remembering that's how it happened, which is not good for
Nice.
me.
Mm,
It's chess is one of those things where if I'm not disciplined in how I spend my time, it very quickly becomes the only thing that I care about, and it can't be the only thing that I care about because there's other stuff that I have to do with my time. Um, but I like chess and I still play it sometimes. What I'll say is
mm,
this: actual literary commentary. Chess is a really good choice for Waverly's prodigy tendencies, I think, because uh she I think there's a parallel between the social game of being Chinese and the literal game of playing chess. Like Do you remember the sequence? I'm probably gonna get parts of it wrong, but there's a part of the book where Waverly like breaks off from her mom and starts like running away, um,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
in her head she's thinking like, when I come back, my mom's gonna be like, oh my god, I was so worried about you, and she'll show like some
mhm,
amounts of affection that she wasn't getting before, etc. And then when she actually
mhm,
comes back, the mom, yeah,
and
like.
regret for, like,
Mhm.
showing her off, whatever, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So and she's having this argument because she's mad at her mom for like boasting about her in the Chinese community and whatever. Um,
Mhm,
and then when she actually does come back, the mom kind of is very dismissive of her and is like, "Oh, who is this girl?" Whatever. Um, and the way the book frames it, it's almost like the mom is like outplaying her at this social game, where she wants to. She's trying to like make a play to make her mother upset, but the mother like doesn't give her what she wants. And I think like, isn't this like what prompts her to like quit chess eventually, where like after this she stops feeling invincible because she realizes like how fragile she is and like how easily her mother can outplay her in the social game. It was something like that. It was actually a really beautiful passage, where she feels like she felt invincible up to a certain point, but then something happened. I think it was this. It could have been a different thing though. Something happens that like makes her invisible armor fall away, and victory doesn't seem like easy and natural anymore. It's something she actually has to fight for, and she's like scared of losing all of the time now. Um,
mhm.
which is honestly very
I think
relatable
that's an
as a chess
accurate
player.
summary.
Yeah. Um,
Mm,
so anyway, I think like Waverly is my favorite character because I am very similar in the way that I see the world. I have in my notes that written down to talk about this, that like I've kind of quit chess, or at least like studying chess seriously, um because uh the real reason why I quit is because I decided like the amount of time and effort that it would take for me to continue to improve at chess, I would rather invest that in other things. So like I did in YouTube for a while, then in writing a book. Now it's going to be studying Korean. Like there's always something in my life that I'm studying, and there's always like I always have a lot of intellectual energy that I can divert in a variety of different places. Um, but chess was kind of the first, maybe second one that was really like my thing. Like I did this for me. I guess it was school when I was in high school, but like chess became like a big one in college. Um,
mhm,
and so I think I like see the world in the same way as Waverly, in that like it all kind of just looks like chess. It's all just different variations of chess to me. Like every conversation is kind of a chess game to me, where like
mhm,
I'm thinking about like, here are like eight different possible things that I could say right now that will take the conversation in different directions. Which one do I think is the best one? In the same way that like, oh, on a chessboard there's like eight moves I can play right now. Which of these is the best one? And I'll like look into the future and say like, well, okay, if we do this, then this is gonna happen, etc., etc. Um, so like for like career stuff, it's the same. It's like if I take this job and I get locked into doing this kind of work for a couple of years, then what's that going to look like on my resume? What's my next job going to look like? It's all the same calculation. It's all the same kind of thinking. And even the studying of like looking back at like old conversations and social interactions and being like, did this go the way that I wanted it to? Did I feel like I had a good time, the other person had a good time? Is there anything I could have said or done differently? Did I miss any details? Or I almost said over the board, but it's more like, I don't know, over the table or over dinner or wherever it is we are. Like what did I miss? Now that I'm looking back on it, um, and so like this like chess brain thing, like I don't know, it's still just like a big part of my life. And it's just kind of nice to see a character who thinks in the same way that I do.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, as someone who never enjoyed chess, I cannot say the
Yeah.
same thing, but it is
Yeah.
really cool to have to hear that perspective, and not to rain on your parade, but I did not like Waverly because she was just so annoying and mean to
She's so
June.
annoying. She's so annoying and she's so mean, but she's so like, she's just like me in so many ways. I'm also kind of mean
Mm.
and annoying. I don't show people this side of me very often, but like secretly in my heart of hearts, I'm kind of mean and annoying. I just have a very, very good mask that I put on out in the world. Um, but Yeah, I love Waverly. What I will say about the
Mm.
chess thing is that I also have a propensity to kind of dissociate and like lose track of the present, which is a very chess thing to do, I think, where it's like you almost like disconnect from the board as you see it and you just float off into all the other boards that you could be living in instead. I do that I do that like for life now. Like when I start talking, especially when I'm talking about books and stuff, like I kind of stop seeing like the world around me and I'm just like surrounded by like the vast like realm of books and possibilities and all the different things that I could be talking about. It's kind of cool. But also sometimes you have to like recenter yourself and remember like, oh yeah, I have like a physical body and like a real life that I have to deal with.
Mm.
Anyway, that's my chess rant.
Um, Completely unrelated. I was just thinking
Yeah,
about Waverly and June. I feel like they're probably the two that we see interact the most in the
yeah,
book,
yeah.
and I'm just thinking, like, I don't think I've ever seen all 4 of the daughters interact together, or, like,
Yeah.
even 2 of them interact together much besides
Mhm.
Lena or not Lena, June and Waverly, and then I
Yeah.
was like, "Then why?" It just struck me, like, it's interesting that the book is centered on the Joy Luck Club being
Mhm.
the 4 mothers and then their daughters, but they never actually really interact that much.
Yeah, I think I would have liked that a lot more. I think that if I were writing this premise, I think every single chapter would be a different pairing between the different girls, um, and
Mm.
like them talking about their pasts and stuff, because that's kind of
Mhm,
how my
mhm.
book is structured. Every single chapter in my
Mm.
book is just a really long conversation, uh, a very interesting conversation, I like to think. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I do think, yeah, I would have loved to see more interactions between them. It ends up being more like these four women are all kind of along separate paths, but they kind of like have like little conversations and interactions that are very cute. They're kind of like they'll be like talking to each other about like their divorces and their problems with their husbands and stuff. And there's
Mhm.
sort of like loose allusions to the fact that they're all childhood friends. Like I don't remember exactly who this was, but there was like a short passage about how like one of the girls like this is the bedroom where I had those other two girls over all of the time and we would just sit around and hang out and stuff, which I thought was really sweet.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm, mhm.
and then related to that, I ah this is sad for me actually. I feel very sad because I never really had that experience growing up.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
didn't I don't think I really had any friends before the age of like 12. Uh like
That's relatable.
yeah, yeah. Um cuz I probably talked about this already. But like I grew up in like on Staten Island surrounded by white kids. I had autism. So I didn't really understand what was going on in the social world. I technically had friends, but I didn't really trust them or like them very much looking back on it. It's actually that's actually pretty funny. I actually don't think I liked my friends like at all. My
Mm.
friends were just the people who insisted on hanging out with me, and I just
Mm.
didn't
Mhm.
really say no to that.
Mhm.
Um,
Hmm.
and especially like being transgender. I'm also transgender, by the way. I was born a boy. I now identify as a woman. Especially being transgender, I didn't have any girlfriends growing up in the platonic sense. Like I didn't have like the experience of having like that one girl that have known since you were a kid and you grew up together and like saw each other like go through all kinds of stuff. Like I don't have that, and I also can never have that because my childhood is over and I don't get a redo on that one. Um,
Mm.
so that's very sad for me, I think. I feel almost like kind of like false nostalgia for the things in this book where I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to have this kind of childhood.
Mm. False nostalgia is a very relatable feeling.
Yeah.
I don't think I feel that necessarily to anything in the book, but
Mhm.
just on the topic of friends, yeah, I, like, didn't have that we did have a few family friends that I'll say I was friends with, like,
Yeah.
we always played together, but that's not quite the same as adult friendships where, like, for me, like, friendship now means, like, an emotional connection,
Yeah. Yeah.
an investment in each other's lives
As a kid, it's
consistently
just
and
who you are spending time with, pretty much.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not like I'm really close to any of those kids anymore at all. Like, I
Yeah.
barely see them, I don't talk to them, so I could definitely relate to that. Just, like, wishing feeling like, oh, that like, it'd be cool to have that person who's been with you throughout your life and that you still talk to and
Yeah.
knows what you've been through.
Hmm. Yeah, I have some friends like that from like college era mostly, and a couple from high school.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
but like, yeah, yeah, it's weird. I think when you get older, like it gets harder to make friends, I guess, which is something everyone says, of
Yes.
course. And I've always thought like, well, I mean, if you just like keep going out and meeting people and talking to people, like you can make new friends. Like it's just like it gets harder in the sense that like fewer people are pushing themselves to do it, and it's easier just to like stay with the friends you already know. But if you really want to make friends, I think you can do it. Like you can just go out there and talk to people and stuff. But
But
there
talking to people is
but it's
scary.
scary. Uh, and also, like, thinking about it from the perspective of what we're talking about here, it's
Mhm,
um, like I can never have a friend who has gone through my formative experiences with me again. I have um a couple of really close friends who like saw like I would say a very undeveloped version of me, especially right after I came out as transgender. Um, and that's like I struggled a ton in college, as I'm sure I've said already before. Um, and like the friends that I have now from college, like this is before I met you actually, because I also technically know you from college, but like I met you when I was a senior and like my sophomore and junior years were the when I or kind of what I'm talking about right now. Uh,
mm, mhm,
so but yeah, being a sophomore slash junior, and like struggling a ton and like trying to figure out who I am, how I interact with the world, and all of these different things. Like, I can never meet someone again who like knows that experience firsthand because it's already done. Like, I can't
mhm,
make a new college level friend who saw that part of me. Um, and that's like uh, it's interesting, I guess. It's sad in some ways, beautiful in another way, where like once a time in your life is over, like you can no longer share that with someone else. Unless, I mean, you can
mhm,
tell them about it like secondhand, but it's not the same as like
mhm,
living through it with somebody and having that shared
mhm,
experience.
mhm. That's fair.
Yeah.
But in some senses, I've also thought, like, this is kind of more in the context of potentially dating guys,
Hmm.
and, like, just in my experience so far, a lot of the guys I've dated just are not very mature, and I'm like I've heard stories of, like, dads being, like, super big troublemakers, doing drugs growing up, and then they grow up, they mature, they quit drugs, they're more responsible now, and, like, they're in I don't know about this, but, like, presumably in a happy marriage and a healthy family, and I'm like just thinking about that, like, would I have liked that theoretical guy who was super immature when he was young? Like, would we have been friends? Would we have, like, talked to each other at all even, just given, like, the fact that I was just in such different friend groups, and then, like, is that someone I would have wanted to know?
Hmm.
Is something that I've been pondering, like, do would I rather not know that side of this theoretical person and, like, not be judging them and their old choices in
Yeah.
that moment or even after?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's, like, a flip side of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I find this very interesting. I was also so if you haven't heard this already, Kelly and I met in the Wushu Club at Cornell University. Wushu is performance Chinese martial arts. We both did it. I doubt either of us can remember a single thing about it, but we were in the
I
club.
can barely say I did it. I was just there for the vibes,
You
honestly.
I was also mostly there for the vibes. We were not we were not high level at the act of doing wushu in the slightest. I think we all just liked having friends. But anyway,
I was barely a beginner.
yeah. Um, but anyway, the Wushu friend group is very interesting to me because it is very, very for lack of a better term, like clean, like very neat. I actually learned a word in Korean. It's yukyo, which means Confucian or like very proper. Like
Hmm.
our wushu friend circle, I think was very, very wukyo, yukyo. And like I think my favorite little anecdote from that story is that, or from those days, is that we have a friend named Winnie, and Winnie and Robert, who are basically, they have one brain cell that they share between them, and it is not working properly. Um, it's very funny.
Love it
Whenever
though.
Robert, Winnie, and I all hang out together, I think we take like the cube root of all of our IQs. It's we become very dumb very quickly. Um, it's kind of awesome. But anyway, um, they uh they love saying like smoke weed every day, 420, blaze it, etc., etc. It's almost like a verbal tick for them. I guess you would call it a vocal stim in the modern age. And I always like whenever I hear them say it, I'm always like, have either of you ever like smoked or done weed like at all? And they were like, Autumn, I don't even think we've seen weed. Like,
Honestly, that's real.
so these were my college friends, like kind of nerds, kind of ultra nerds. And I'm an ultra
Definitely
nerd
ultra
too.
nerds.
Yeah. Um, but it's such a big contrast from like other parts of my life where like uh I don't think I know any like actual drug addicts, but like I certainly know people who have like obtained weed in a way that is illegal. Um, like at Cornell, actually, now that I think about it. Oh yeah, my friend did coke at a frat house
Mm,
one time. And she
mhm,
told me about it like several years later, and I was like, "You did
mhm.
coke?" And I was like, and she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "That's kind of what everyone did at Cornell." And I was like, "I went to Cornell and I didn't do
What?
coke." And she was
What?
like, "You had some nerdy friends." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I did." Um,
This
anyway,
is news to me.
so
Okay.
now you understand like the kind of life that we were living in the Wushu Club. We were
Mhm.
the nerdy ones for sure. Anyway, why were we talking about this? Because you were talking
Um,
about guys without who used to be very,
and
yeah,
yeah, and like
drugs
the concept of like
rebellious. Yeah.
the contrast between wanting friends who have grown with you
Hmm.
through everything and like know and understand that part of you versus but like in theory, let's say like what if there are parts of someone that you would prefer not to know or like
Yeah.
from what I said like
Hmm.
a potential partner versus like but also like from my perspective like is there any part of my life that I'm like oh I don't want
Yeah.
my future partner
Mhm.
to know about this or future friend.
Yeah. I mean, I'll
Let's talk
say
about just
I have an
remove that.
extremely poignant example of this dynamic, which is being transgender and meeting people in the
Mhm.
world who frankly don't know that I'm transgender because I passed pretty well. Thank you, genetics. And also my voice is pretty good at this point. Used to be worse. Um, but like I have to make like a conscious decision with everybody I meet whether or not to tell them that I was born as a boy, and if so, like when and how to do that. And I'm honestly like, it's a very exhausting part of my life where I'm constantly doing this calculation in my head of like, is this person cool with trans people? Is it okay if they know that I'm transgender? Um, and like at some point maybe like the scales will tip to to a point where I'm like it's okay to tell this person I trust them. um like in Korea I was talking to someone actually who like mentioned that she had some MTF friends, which stands for male to female, so someone who was born a boy and became a girl, which is what I did. um and when she mentioned that she had those friends, I was like, oh yeah, I'm also that. And she was like, huh, really? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh my god, you're so pretty though. And I was like, oh, that's so nice of you to say.
Aw.
Anyway, but yeah, point being, like, yeah, like I have to make an extremely conscious decision about whether or not to share this part of my past because whoever I tell this to, it's going to be like a tremendous shift in how they think about me. Um, it's it's almost like there's a whole second person inside of me that not a lot of people ever see or know about. um but he's in there. uh it's not even that like I became a different person, it's almost like there's two different people who are doing different things in my brain. It's very confusing.
Hmm.
Anyway, That's what I was thinking about.
Mhm, mhm. No, that's fair. That's totally fair.
Yep. Looking through my notes again, one fun little detail is um Jingmei Wu, there's like a short, cute story about how she was like playing with a crab that her family had brought home. And then later, like her mom like put the crab in the pot and boiled it alive, and she was like super traumatized by that. Which is a just one of those classic Chinese experiences, I feel like.
Mm.
That you just kind of have to deal with. I had a girlfriend in high school with a similar story where her family also brought home a live crab and she also played with it. And then later that night, she ate crab for dinner. But the way she told it to me was that she never quite made the connection that the crab she ate was the same one that she was playing with. So,
Oops.
so for a long time, she was just sitting there like, "Oh, that was a fun day with that crab." And then later, she like looked
Like,
back
where'd
on
it
that
go?
time of her life and was like, "Oh, oh, I ate that crab,"
Mm.
which I think is very funny. Um, and then related to crabs, there's another, I think the same story actually about Jingmei, but another fun detail about that is that when she was eating dinner um, with her mom and some visitors, I think there were
Mhm.
a bunch of crabs on the table. And oh yeah, Waverly was there, and Waverly obviously takes the
Yes.
best crabs for herself and her husband and her kid, because she's Waverly and she knows what she wants. Um, and Jingmei, I think like deliberately takes the worst crab, and even
Mhm.
her mom is like, no, 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 don't take that one, don't take that one, that's a shitty one. Take this one instead. Um, and um, the precise line that her mom says, they're talking about the dinner after, and the mom says specifically, only you pick that crab, nobody else take it, I already know this, everybody else want best quality, you thinking different. um and I think Jingmei, like in response to this in her head, is like, I don't know what that means, what do you mean I think different, are you judging me again? Like that's roughly the vibe. But like I think like I don't know if it's obvious exactly, but I read this very clearly as like this is a very like indirect compliment that her mom is giving her of like,
Mm.
you're the only person who will deliberately take something that's worse so that somebody else can have something better. And like me, I'm your mom. Like you took something shittier so that I could have the nice crab. And then obviously I switched it because I want you to have the better crab because you're my daughter. Um
Mhm.
but like I really like that because it's first of all, it's a very nice like character moment for Jingmei where we get a sense of like who she is and what she values. And second of all, it's a very nice character moment for the mom because the mom notices this and she's acknowledging a very positive trait of her daughter. But then third, like it's very much like lost in translation, where like Jingmei doesn't realize she's being complimented. She doesn't realize that like she's demonstrated like a good Chinese value that her mom wants her to have. And partially because of the language barrier, but also partially because of like a cultural barrier where like Chinese people kind of tend to say things indirectly like this. And like she
Mm.
doesn't quite know what she means by that because she's American. She doesn't have any social awareness. Nunchi. But anyway, um, I like that part too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that was a really beautiful moment as well. I didn't necessarily immediately read it as a compliment, but
Mhm.
the vibe was definitely there of
Yeah,
like,
it's one of those weird, like uh,
yeah, especially
Chinese
with the
half
jade
compliments.
pendant. Yeah,
Mhm.
and like, oh, like she wants June to have the pendant, and like this is your life's importance, which I still don't understand the meaning of yet.
I also still don't
But
quite get the jade pendant. This is so,
mhm.
that the pendant is like her mom gives her the pendant, and it's like wearing the pendant will like help you like understand where you came from or something like that. How exactly does it go? Do you remember?
No, but I just remember the
Okay,
term life's importance.
life's importance. Yeah, I
Like
don't
that
know.
is the symbol of the
Jingmei
jade.
received a jade pendant from her mom that is apparently important, but she doesn't get the chance to ask her mom why it's so important. And so it becomes like this mystery of like, I don't really know what this means, but I know it's important, and that is scary for me. Um, it's roughly speaking how Jingmei's brain is working in that moment, I think.
Mhm. And not knowing what is important about it.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Feeling like that lost
yeah.
sense of connection to her culture and her mom.
hmm So more fun random notes as we wrap up here. Uh, Waverly Jung is actually kind of homophobic, which is really funny.
Oh, yes.
Like there's a she says something in the
Oh my
book about
god.
how Jingmei's hairdresser she's like, "Isn't that guy gay? He might have AIDS. You should come to my hairdresser instead." I
I
was
think
like,
that was also at the Lunar New Year dinner with the crab,
I think so. Or it was like part of the
and I'm
same
just like,
chapter, the same
"Oh."
sequence. I did
Yeah.
read that and I was like, oh, my girl's homophobic. I don't like that. Um,
Mm.
so- but but I could fix her. Um, what else do we have in my notes? I think okay, and then the I was scrolling through my notes to find something else that was like funny or charming, and I just read girl being beaten in the other apartment, which is something from Lena's
Oh.
childhood. And I'm like, okay, never mind. This is actually a very sad book. Uh all right.
It is, yeah, I would not categorize this book as a happy book in any
No.
way.
This is
Definitely
a heavy one.
somber.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, you know what? Okay. I didn't talk about my own book that's hopefully going to be released in the next 5 years.
Mhm,
But I did note in a couple of places funny comparisons between these characters and the main character of my book. So I will run through those
mhm,
quickly for our
mhm.
final segment. Um, so Jingmei sort of like jumping between majors. Cassandra doesn't jump between. Okay, back up. I'm writing a book. The main character is Cassandra. She is a hapless, half Asian, half white, 25-year-old who struggles a lot with dating and understanding her own emotions. Who also ends up the sole survivor of the climate apocalypse. Very quick plot summary.
Oh, that's who Cassandra is. Okay, because I read
Yes.
your notes and I was like, "Who's Cassandra?"
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's Cassandra, main
That
character
makes
of my book. Um,
helpful context now.
Yes. So similar to Jingmei, she's very like hapless, kind of moving through life, feeling a little bit lost. She doesn't quite know what she wants to do. Also, she's living in the apocalypse, so it's a little harder to know what you want to do. But she's kind of indecisive, kind of lost in the world, which is very fun. Um, I think I may have stolen the concept of, I guess, being in an arranged marriage and then having to leave it for personal reasons from this book now that I think about it, because that's also a plot point for Cassandra. She was in an arranged marriage despite being American. Um yeah, I wrote the line that I wrote in my notes is Cassandra was also in an arranged marriage with a spoiled man-child husband who couldn't have sex with her. Did I accidentally remember this book? This book meaning the Joy Luck Club. Um and so this is in relation to Lindo Dong, one of the moms, who also is in an arranged marriage, and her husband also can't is very uncomfortable with the idea of having sex. And that I wrote that for Cassandra, and then I didn't think about where it came from. But then I read this part about the Joy Luck Club. I reread the Joy Luck Club for this episode, and I have read the Joy Luck Club in the past as well. Um, so now I'm like, okay, I think I may have just straight up stolen that from the Joy Luck Club, which is very funny.
Oops.
Oops. I maybe no one will notice. The Joy Luck Club is pretty old by now. Um, I think that was it. That's all my fun Cassandra stuff.
Can I also just say real quick,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful in a way that this book doesn't necessarily perpetuate the idea of Asian American kids being like uber successful
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wouldn't say like career successful and just like happy leading happy lives
Mhm.
after being adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely like the idea that oh like Asian American kids in the US are stereotyped as like super hardworking, super smart, get good grades, go to Ivy Leagues, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm just glad that that isn't exactly perpetuated
Yeah.
in this book, at least not overtly. Like, I'm glad that they show aspects of
Mhm.
the daughters' lives that are like still filled with strife and struggle and like, they're still people, they still have
Mhm.
the same issues with
Yeah.
relationships and figuring out who they are, and it's
Yeah.
not like, "Oh, you're an Asian American kid, you're smart, you're
Mhm.
fine, you're gonna be fine."
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it this way, as someone who is Asian American and has probably almost all Asian American friends at this point, I don't think I have like a couple white friends left. But mostly Asian American friends. Um, There are way, way more Jingmeis in the world than Waverleys. For every child chess prodigy who's now a tax attorney and making a fuck ton of money and who has all her shit together, etc., there's probably like 5 or 6 Jingmeis who are kind of just wandering through life feeling a little bit lost, who like they had high expectations put on them and they didn't quite fail exactly, but they also didn't quite become the prodigy that their parents imagined, and now they're kind of trying to like figure out what they want to do with their lives. That is way more common when it comes to the Asian American population than, the success story of someone like Waverly. Oh, Kelly's internet has cut out. That is a great place for us to stop. Um, okay. Well, thank you so much for watching. Um, Kelly can't hear me. I'm gonna wrap it. Say goodbye to
Oh,
Oh, you're back. Oh, okay.
I am back.
Oh,
I'm so sorry for
that makes my
that.
life easier. Um,
At what point did I cut out?
uh, I think I was just talking, and then I
I
didn't
see.
realize you didn't hear anything that I said.
I
Basically, I
see.
said, for every hyper successful Waverly, there's a lot more like Jingmeis out in the world who are kind of a little bit
Mm,
lost. Um,
mhm,
as someone
mhm,
with a lot of Asian American friends, like there's more Jingweis than there are Waverlys out there, I think.
mm, mhm.
Anyway, that's a great place for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for watching the third episode of the Starlight Book Club. We do not know what we're going to read next, I don't think. So we'll
Not
talk
yet.
about that offline. And
It'll be a surprise.
I guess I'll put a comments under this video when we know. But thank you so much for watching slash listening. I've been Autumn, and this is Kelly. Say bye, Kelly.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Toodaloo.